a question that I frequently get, and have for years in my private practice, and that is, hey, we want to keep everything, off the table, and we don't want anyone to be able to pull, our judgment from the court file and kind of look through it, and put something in the newspaper or something like that, right? Because that's what can happen with public records. What people don't often understand is even in mediation or arbitration or anything that's done outside of the courthouse, including private judging, ultimately you are going to have to submit a judgment to the court, and that judgment needs to be specific enough so that the court can enforce the judgment. So you don't have to put in all of the detail that you would ordinarily put into, like your preliminary financial disclosures, all the forms that have to get filled out. Those eventually do get filed, so those are part of the public record in the court system, in the superior court system. You can avoid that in mediation. So oftentimes the disclosure process itself is fairly truncated. You don't have to stick with all of the formalities of every single piece of paper that might have an asset on it that's at issue in the case. Make sure that's been served and reviewed and everyone has done their due diligence and yada yada yada. You can really short circuit that and just say, look, here's all the stuff, we talked about it in mediation, neither of us thought there's anything else, done. And that can be much, much quicker, and nothing then gets filed with the court on that front. So there's no property disclosures in the court record. There's no income and expense declaration in the court record. That's just something that exists in the mediator's file. And then the marital settlement agreement that we can produce can be very high level. It's going to have to identify assets, right? But it's not going to identify values or anything like that, where really people are most interested in on the outside world. Now, there are some cases, and private judging, by the way, you can do similar things, but regardless, the end product is the most important thing. So when I'm putting something together as a mediator, I'm going to include, whatever detail I think is necessary. And some things do require a higher level of details than sometimes the parties are comfortable with. And they don't want things like that in the public file. And so there is a way that you can have kind of a separate marital settlement agreement that delineates all the detail and all of the information that you need, that's referenced and incorporated. It's the legal term. It's incorporated into the MSA, the marital settlement agreement, that gets filed with the court, but it is not attached to the MSA that is filed in the court. So all of that detail, again, just remains in the party's hands as long as the marital settlement agreement contains enough, information so that you can identify the thing later if it ever needs to be enforced. So again, there are steps. That's a very technical thing to do. There are steps involved in doing that. You can do the same thing in private judging. You can have the same, order. And again, this is much more common in private judging, frankly, than it is in the mediation world. But there are ways to keep that detail out of the court file if privacy is your number one concern. On the parenting issue specifically, again, there's public policy out there that says that the courts really need to know what's happening with the parenting plan, what's happening with child support, because they want to make sure that the kids are getting the kind of life that they need in each home that's adequate for their upkeep, right? So there are some things that must be in the marital settlement agreement on the child custody and child support side. But if there's additional information that's just kind of, secondary to those bigger picture items, then you can keep that stuff in, like I say, in that private stipulation that's not or that is incorporated but not attached to the judgment itself. So you can do that with parenting stuff as well. It's just going to be a little bit more limited. They are almost identical, except that, again, the private judging world still has to utilize all of the, the rules and, standards in the family code. So that is going to require a deeper dive into some of the financial issues probably, but on the privacy side, it's the same, right? You can have the same, discretion when you're submitting documents to be filed into that public file that you can with mediation. It's just in the private judging world, you're going to have to do things by the book. There's no short-circuiting anything. There's no truncating the process in private judging, except that you can maybe get rid of some processes that just don't apply to your case, which in itself makes things much more streamlined. The cost of private judging can be very, very high. And that is because you've got either, like I said, a retired bench officer or a very, highly respected, regarded, and experienced, most likely family law, certified family law specialist, someone that's been doing it for a long time as a practitioner. Their billing rates can be extremely high. So understand that it's not just as easy as going in there. They have to get paid. And so you can expect to pay as much, if not more, for your private judge than you pay for your own attorney. Now, if the issues really do, speak to the need for a private judge, then understand that that is an investment that you're making that's probably very, very good, especially if you get someone that does an excellent job and has a lot of experience in that realm. But it does come with a price tag, and mediation does not have that same price tag. Mediation is much more modest, and that's just because you're not getting all the bells and whistles. You're not doing all the same things that you need to do in a private judging case. You're really just, streamlining is the most important value in the case, right? And that means, it's going to take a lot less time, and there's going to be a lot less legal effort put into the end product.